I was shocked, literally shocked, when I saw that councillors I never expected come out on the record and condemn not just the behavior of Councillor Whitehead, but take some accountability for enabling that same bullying culture and saying that they're going to change. Is it possible that the old guard has lost their power to control so much of the city's agenda? Are we really going to get some kind of transparency? Can we get on to working on other issues like the crisis of the encampments that we have in our city as the cold weather comes in on us? Are we going to help the people in the encampments? Can we try to solve the housing affordability crisis in this city? How are we treating Indigenous people in our city? Can we do something better than we've done? Is this a moment, Hamilton? Is this the beginning of the end of a dark and difficult politics in our city, a dark and difficult era? Is there hope? Well, I'm so thrilled to have on the OShow today rock star, activist, artist, Renaissance man, Tom Wilson, to tell me what he thinks is going on in the city and what should be done, especially around Indigenous issues, and also a superb panel of experts on the encampment and the housing affordability crisis. You are not going to want to miss this entire OShow. Let's have the conversation. Now, you are, of course, working super hard, at least it seems to me on your social, on doing activism and advocacy for Indigenous people and for change. And I want to talk to you about that because I know, City of Hamilton, the whole thing around taking down the statue of Sir John A. I thought that was a huge disappointment from council, and citizens had to go and take it down themselves.
That's right.
What did you think of that whole situation? Do you think council gets it? Do they even understand the needs and the rights of Indigenous people?
No, I don't think they do. I think that they have to be very sad. They can't possibly feel any joy chasing money and demanding and demeaning their fellow Hamiltonians because they may not fit into their archaic caveman ideals. That's really what it comes down to. It's like people who have a different point of view aren't really allowed the benefit of being heard by city council. City council are acting like a bunch of bouncers at a strip bar. And I don't think that that kind of behavior should be happening at City Hall. I mean, come on, let's face it. When my grandsons act up or get mouthy, I mean, they get straightened out. You get told that they have to treat people with respect, and you have to honor the great advantages that you have. I think that City Council needs to go talk to their grandmothers and get straightened out really fast. Regarding the Sir Johnny MacDonald statue that sat in Gore Park for way too long, the Sir Johnny MacDonald statue in Hamilton represented Canada's attempt to kill off the entire Indigenous population of this land. And it's one of the grossest and inhumane sagas in the history of this planet. And it continues today. This genocide belongs to Canada. I love this country, but I have to stand up and face the fact that Canada is responsible for trying to murder an entire population of people. It's as gross as anything from, it's not North American history, it's world history. It is a history of man on this planet. It's the same as South Africa. It's the same as biblical times. That's what it was. So to allow Sir Johnny MacDonald statue, when we're in the throes, when we're finding the bodies of Indigenous children buried in schools across Canada, and City Council can't make the effort to do the right thing. They have to let the people do it. And it just makes me sad and makes me angry. And I mean, sadly, we have easy access to anger, and we don't have any leaders taking us to the trauma of the people of Hamilton, the trauma of the Indigenous population. We're able to embrace anger because we're faced with it every day. the leaders, our elected officials deal out anger to us every week because their black and dying hearts are incapable of compassion and understanding the trauma that got people to the point where their lives are living in tents in city parks. Let's understand that. Let's understand our citizens and the people who need help. Until we start helping the people who need it, we're going down with the ship, man. And by the time you and I are going down with the ship, the city council will be long gone.
So what do we do?
We have to start taking care of one another. Ripping down Sir John A. Macdonald statues is one thing. That came out of both anger and trauma, a combination of two very deep emotions. What we have to do is to start embracing one another and taking care of one another. We have to start standing up for one another. We're the only people that are going to do it. I mean, Laura, I'm sure I saw you down at City Hall when Yellow Jackets were infesting the front of City Hall. Not only did City Hall allow free speech, which was great, but they pulled a bus up and almost hit one of my grandkids on the sidewalk, and nothing happened. Do you want to know what? I'm just a guy who writes books and plays music. I'm just a happy citizen of Hamilton, and I went down there to stand up against the racism that was going on at City Hall. I didn't see one city councilor. I didn't see the mayor. I saw nobody else standing with me. How do you think that makes me feel? How do you think that makes the people who need help feel? That there is nobody there for them. It's kind of sick.
I'll give you that. And eventually some councillors showed up because we did it week after week. And eventually the mayor showed up for a timed photo op. But you're right. We were left to do it ourselves, right? We were left to protect our own front porch from...
It was, Laura. And you know what? I'm talking about, I was down there 3 different Saturdays and I didn't see anyone. So listen, if they showed up, I'm not here to beat anybody up.
But like
Laura.
2 or 3 of them, not 16, not a bunch of them standing in solidarity with the people of Hamilton and saying, get this shit off our front porch. We are not going to have people berate and yell bigoted stuff at people getting off buses in front of our city hall because we have different values. We care about our citizens. They didn't do that, Tom. They didn't do that.
No, they didn't do that, Laura. And, you know what? Your passion and your point is really well taken. I'd like to actually inherit some of your passion about this, because every time I decide to go to Twitter, and Hamilton is usually leading my Twitter feed, and it's not for any good reasons. Wouldn't it be great if I was able to open up my phone and open up Twitter and see Hamont and see some great thing happening in this city, see this city being led by people who actually cared about one another? I mean, it's easy to tear down a person's life without a thought, but act like babies when their own masculinity is challenged. That's why I use that analogy that they're acting like a bunch of bouncers at a strip bar, man, because it's this knucklehead attitude. And by the way, Laura, last time I came on your show, I got friends on city council. Last time I came on your show, I lost friends, right? I expect to lose friends again today, but I don't want to really attack anybody personally. I'm just talking about what I'm aware of, and what I'm aware of is just a tip of an iceberg. People like you and Graham Crawford and Joe Coleman, you know, they're the ones report. You guys are the ones telling me what's going on. You know, the Jelly Brothers. I mean, these are the voices that are brave enough to point out what's wrong in City Hall. The rest of us are not taking our cues completely from you, but it's opening up the door of opportunities for us to learn about what's going on in this city.
Well, Tom, I appreciate that you follow and that you take some of the information we're trying to put out there. And I'm sorry that you lost friends, man. I get it. This show has not helped my career or my friendships, but the city's in crisis. There are people right now who have nowhere to go, and it's cold outside, and we've got to hold our leaders to some kind of accountability. You know, there are other things I could do with my time, but this It matters, and it matters to you, and you're as humble as always. You're out there, you're raising your voice, you're using your voice to try to have Hamiltonians heard. And I hope you're gonna appreciate who's coming up after you on the show today, Tom, because we got 3 people working on the encampment issue, and they said the same thing as you. It's time for us to start caring about each other, right? We got to show compassion to each other. They have the same idea that you do, and it's people like you and people like them that give me hope, right? It's not that we're all jerks who don't want to help each other. It's not that we're happy with the leadership we don't have in the city. We're not. We want to do something. We want to fix something. So do you think, Tom, that, when the election comes around next year, people might actually say, enough of this shit, we need some real leadership? We don't need to be talked down to and bullied by the bouncer at the strip club?
I can't even believe that it's a subject that we're considering having these men back in city council. I mean, there's 2 decent city councilors that keep saying the things that I agree with, that speak with their hearts, not their pocketbooks, and they're both women. So maybe we need a bunch of women in there, Laura. Maybe we need an all-woman city hall. Maybe that would start to clean out the corners of the debris that's been left by this establishment. It's horrible.
Well, those women were at the same rallies we were at during the Summer of Hate, Tom. They were 2 of the council.
Of course they were. Of course they were.
Right. So I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure why, but I do know that they give me hope every day. I get my cues from the good work they're doing around the table in that building, right? I get to sit on the outside. They have to go there every single day and deal with that.
No. So talking about an election next year, I mean, I don't know. These guys, I don't know what they're going to do after this. I can't imagine many options, The last time I was on your show, I suggested that City Hall try harder. It's obviously beyond their ability to try harder, so I really suggest they pack up their dirty underwear and leave City Hall now, like today, wander off into the wilds with your ego and stay there, please.
I'll second that all the way down. Tom, as always, you give me hope. You might not think so, but you do. You give me hope because you're out there. You could be doing other things, but you still pay attention and you still care so much about Hamiltonians. And
Thank you, Laura.
I
love Hamilton.
I
love Hamilton. I'm writing a second book for Random House about Hamilton. We're launching a play that's going across the country about Hamilton. I love this city so much. It's in my art. It's in everything that I work towards involves the city. And the only plug that I have is that I've started an Indigenous scholarship at McMaster University in honor of Wilson, who raised me. And we are raising money to send an Indigenous student to get through university, because every Indigenous person that graduates from university is a win against colonialism.
Tom, I want you to just say the name again of the Indigenous person who raised you, because it might have broken up a bit over the Zoom link here, and I don't want the name missed.
Well, she wasn't Indigenous. She was my great aunt, and her name was Bunny Wilson. She was the greatest person that I'll ever know.
Awesome. And can you tell us the name of the play and that you're doing about Hamilton so we can start to look forward to it now?
Well, it launches in 2023 at Theatre Aquarius, I'm told, okay? I'm told. I have not signed a deal, I'm told. So I'm just letting you know what I know, Laura. It's going to be called, probably be called Beautiful Scars after my first book. And there's also a movie that is just finishing up filming between now and Christmas on the book also. So
wow.
Everything is really good. And everything that I do and create is to honor my Mohawk blood and to step in the richness of this city that we love so much.
Well, I freaking love that, and love you, and love everything you do for Hamilton. To me, if I had to put Hamilton into an individual, it's you, Tom Wilson. You're iconic, and I don't call you the Renaissance man of Hamilton for nothing.
Thank you.
Your art is amazing.
Last thing I'll say is stop being rude, learn to love one another, find respect for yourself, and you'll find respect for the people around you.
That's awesome. Words to live by, and lines us up perfectly with our panel on the encampments. You're the best, Tom. Take care of yourself. We'll have you on again. We've heard so much about the encampment issue over the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic. People are living in parks, they're living on the street in tents, they are in encampments. And we've heard some pretty, in my opinion, terrible language coming from some of our city councillors, including comparing it to whack-a-mole, a game where you're trying to shut things down and they keep popping back up, as though these aren't citizens who are in crisis in our community. We've also heard some competing narratives that there are shelters available. Why don't they just go there? And yet, just the other day, someone posted on social media, kind of like a Mary and Joseph story, where there was actually a Hamilton couple who were pregnant, who had their tent taken away, and there was no room at the inn. There was no shelter available when they went looking. So what is the truth? Are there shelters available and people just don't want to go to them? Are the encampments some kind of a scourge that need to be removed forcibly if it has to be? I remember last winter watching people's belongings being thrown into a garbage truck in front of our city hall in the rain. Broke my heart. And then we saw activists who were just trying to get a conversation with the mayor on camera, not able to get access, and sat outside in the cold for weeks in front of our city hall. So do we have affordable housing available? Is housing affordability something we should all worry about? Well, according to the I Elect Residents Survey, it is the #1 issue that residents who were surveyed identified in this city. So what is going on? I want to learn. I want to know what is happening, and more importantly, what we need to be doing about it, and asking our governments, maybe at all levels, to do to help us out. So I'm so thrilled to have an expert panel here from different perspectives on this issue. And I want to say hi to each of them, and then we will dive right in. First, I want to start with Alice Plug-Buist. Alice, you work right in Barton Street area with people who are on the streets trying to survive, who are living in houselessness. Tell me a little bit about your work, what drew you to it, and maybe your sense of the situation, just briefly, sort of high level, and then we'll come back to you in a minute.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, so I work at Helping Hands Street Mission, and the reason why I work there is really part of what the vision is, or the mission is, to reach out together with love and respect, and it's in Jesus' name. So that does give you the, the main reason is not that I have any lived experience myself, and I wanted everybody to know that as well. I am here kind of as a representative of what I know, what I hear, and people that I've met, but I have not had the lived experience myself. And I do want everybody to know that it's really important to hear the stories from people themselves. And so I'm going to do my best. But that, yeah, just wanted to put that out there, that I don't think any of us that are here, sitting here today, have actually lived on the streets ourselves, have actually lived in a situation where we didn't have a house. And I think that's really important for us to remember as we try to put ourselves into the seats of those who have. And so what we do at Helping Hands is walk alongside people. We offer friendship support. And so that really means we're not doing professional services. We don't offer professional counseling. We don't offer even, shelter or things like that, but we walk alongside them as friends. Conversing with people, asking them what their needs are, becoming friends with them, letting them into our lives as well, and just connecting, and then reaching out with our networks to share them with others as well. So yeah, that's what we do.
Well, thank you, Alice, for the work you do, but also for saying that right off the top. I have no experience at all of anything close to living in houselessness, and I don't know about our other panelists, but I take your distinction right off the top. We don't have lived experience. We are speaking as people who are in different capacities, trying to understand and hopefully even help with those circumstances and with the situation, but that's a very important point. So thank you so much. Jeff, I want to go to you now. You're, of course, with Indwell, and I wanted to have you on the program because whenever there seems to be a conversation around a lack of affordable housing supply in the city, or wait lists that we've heard about for years, or the state of some of our city housing, etc., your organization's name always pops into the conversation. And it's because it is often, and you can tell me if this is an accurate brand, but it is often associated with the right way, if you will, to do affordable housing, meaning that you build homes with dignity. I heard one story about how, when you're building affordable housing, you don't put the laundry room, the shared facility in the basement. You actually put it somewhere where people can have a view. You actually treat tenants in your properties that you're building with the love and the dignity and the respect that they deserve. So they're not second tiered. They are given great places to live. So Jeff, tell me a little bit about, if that's accurate about Indwell, about your reputation, and how it is that you got into this, but how Indwell kind of approaches this from a high level.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And those kind words. I think we're really fortunate in Hamilton that we have some really strong social service agencies, and Indwell's is one of those. Our approach is people coming together, taking what we have and extending that to others in our community. And as you're speaking, I just think about even our fundraising galas as an indicator of who we are as a community, and we very much view our tenants as important stakeholders. So you'll see a wide variety of community coming together, even at a fundraising dinner that includes folks that are our tenants, and I think that's that approach that all of us have the same value in our humanity. I need to be reminded of that sometimes. Sometimes I get sucked into this false narrative that I've accomplished something more than someone else has, and that gives me more value, but it doesn't. We all have the same value, whether I'm sleeping under a tarp on the escarpment, or in a house like the one I'm in at the moment. We still, in our humanity, all have the same value, and I think that's the starting point. And I think it comes down to values, actually, what's important to us. And I think this is the root of what we're having this conversation here in Hamilton and across the country, is what's important to us. Where do we put our energy, our resources? When we have something to offer, where do we extend that? So yeah, happy to be part of this conversation. And I think, whenever we can come with solutions, that's the best place. And proximity to the situation. Just chatting with one of my colleagues this morning, actually a couple of them, who have made it a common practice to spend time in the encampments, getting to know people, dressing wounds, helping people access medication, and some of these just very basic human needs. And I think it's out of that when we understand the challenge, when we get together and we ask people about, what are you looking for? And we, there's another false narrative out there, Laura, that, and I've heard it from lots of politicians and such, that these people want to be camping. Well, this is not camping. There's no marshmallows and s'mores and sitting around. No, this is surviving in World War I type trenches and mud and disease and infections. And as my colleague said, well, and all the folks I met in 4 different encampments yesterday, I didn't meet anyone who wanted to be there. And so I think that's really important to correct that myth as well. Sometimes each of us have a hard time imagining a brighter future, and something different. And that's where it's up to us to work together to find new solutions and to welcome people into a future that maybe we can't even believe is possible, but there are options.
That is so well said, Jeff. And I'm so happy that you addressed that myth head on, because comparing people living in encampments to whack-a-mole, as we saw Councillor Farr do, or suggesting that they're there by choice, as though this is some sort of a game, or they just can't be bothered to go to a shelter or to get on with their lives. It's insulting and it's demeaning and it's not accurate. So I really appreciate you stating that very clearly. I think we need to understand that. I want to now bring in Wade Poziomka. Wade, you've been on this program before for human rights activism that you do as a lawyer. What has been your experience of the encampment issue, how the city's dealing with it, why you're invested in this? Are we handling it the way that we should be or could be, or what do you see high level on this, Wade?
Yeah, thank you for having me back again, Laura, and happy to be here with Alice and with Jeff. Alice's comments really resonated with me. I, of course, don't have lived experience, and I think that's something that has to be at the forefront of this conversation. I wish my involvement in this situation was as a citizen rather than a lawyer, because it really shouldn't be a legal issue. I don't believe for a second that the mayor or council, any mayor, the mayor or any councillor wants to see people suffer. I don't believe that for a minute. I think that we all have different views of this situation, and my hope would be that we could take the political element out of it and work together to find those solutions. I don't think, there's different narratives being spun, and it happens when you're in legal battles, right? It's part of the adversarial process. But I think if you boil it down, nobody on any side of this debate is calling for permanent encampment. That's not anyone's wish. I think what we're recognizing is that there's some shortfalls, and I'm not criticizing the shelter systems in Hamilton. I've had some involvement with the shelter systems, and they're great. There's very compassionate people working in the shelter system, so it's not a criticism of that system, but it's the reality is that homelessness is increasing, and for certain segments of our population at certain times we don't have enough space. So what do we do when we don't have enough space? Do we clear people out? Where do they go, right? So it really is a problem that requires a creative solution. And the last guy that should be involved is a lawyer. But I'm kind of committed to the process because, in my experience, I've seen firsthand the impact that it has on people experiencing homelessness. I was looking up some statistics just to try to really bring this home. And Toronto just released some data, and this is the average deaths per week for people experiencing homelessness. In 2019, it was 2.5. 2.5 people experiencing homelessness per week died. 2020, it was 2.8. Now it's 3.6.
Wow.
It's getting worse. Winter's coming. We're clearing out encampments. We need to be at the same table. Council has a big role to play. It's not all on council. There's provincial funding. There's federal funding. It's a bigger issue, but it just becomes even a more insurmountable issue when we're not working together, but fighting each other, and people aren't willing to speak because there's litigation, and so in my view, we can put all of that aside and have discussions. There's initiatives, there's solutions that we can find. We need more affordable housing, sure, but in the meantime, winter's coming and we're clearing out encampments. There's tiny homes. Tiny homes have been used in 8 cities across Southern Ontario. Great success in Kitchener and Waterloo, and there's a coalition locally that's trying to bring that to Hamilton. They're fast and they're cheap. They can go up and provide insulated shelter. So that's a solution to what's coming, winter. There needs to be a location. And so, there's alternatives. And I think working together and cooperating is the best way to go. Have I been frustrated with, councillors in the mayor at different points? Sure, I have. And I'm sure they've been frustrated with the Hamilton Legal Clinic and me and some people on, the Ham Smart and Keeping Six. But again, it's not about any of us. It's about people who are experiencing homelessness and suffering. And so we need to come to the table.
You mentioned the 3 levels of government. There's a national housing strategy that was hard fought for federally, that a lot of people were very excited about. We saw there's a provincial election coming up in June. We saw the premier just put out a questionnaire asking how people want them to approach affordable housing. I didn't really see a lot about inclusionary zoning and other things in there, but at least the conversation's happening at the province. And there was a protest in front of Queen's Park just recently. asking for more provincial support in this. And then there is the council issue, the hyper-local issue. They have to deal with what's right in front of their city hall, what's right on their own streets. And so I take your point that this isn't about blaming here. It's about what are we going to do? I could have three politicians on fighting with each other about who's most to blame, but I have the three of you on because I want to understand what's real and what we need to be doing about it and asking them to do about it as well. So let me go to you, Alice, because Wade brought up the very real situation on the streets. It's getting cold. There are these things like those smaller houses that some places are using. Do you have a sense that people who are very vulnerable that you work with have hope that there's some sort of solutions coming? Are they aware of any of these options? I mean, what does it feel like for them seeing winter coming down and the experience they have maybe having tried to get into shelters and not been successful at that?
I would say that there is definitely a lot of hopelessness out there among people. It's interesting that you mentioned earlier in the introduction about the Mary and Joseph story. I don't think that's a singular kind of story. Just last night, I was connecting with a doctor at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, who was very concerned about a woman who is currently in the hospital. She's going to be discharged soon. She and her partner are expecting a baby and are being discharged into shelters. She does not want to go there because she knows that she will probably be surrounded by situations that she doesn't feel safe in, and that will cause her to relapse into things that she doesn't want to currently be involved in. And so she and the doctor and me are all feeling like, yeah, it's a pretty hopeless kind of situation. And for me, I would say it really comes down to prioritization. What is important for our city right now, and what do we need to prioritize at this time? We need to prioritize these women and men who are expecting babies or are just looking for a roof over their heads, where they don't need to be worried for the safety of themselves or their property, where they can work through the issues that they have on on the timeline that works for them, rather than being forced into a situation that they know is going to be unsustainable. We need to look at them as people and look at them as people who are on a journey and not yet where they want to be. And give them the dignity of being able to make those choices and take those steps themselves. So if somebody were to go, like you hear every now and then, yes, there are spaces in shelters, and then you hear there aren't spaces in shelters. That's somehow not even really the point. Like for a lot of people, they don't want to go to a shelter because that they know that that's not where their journey is right now, and they want to be able to have a place, find a place where they can start finding their own flourishing themselves. So yeah, I would say there is hopelessness, because the only answer is shelter, or find another spot to pitch your tent, or or a non-answer whatsoever. So yeah, a feeling of hopelessness for sure.
When it comes to prioritization, let me go to you, Jeff. I mean, you hear, as I said, stories of Indwell having success in approaching this problem well, and then people look at it and say, so we're listening to Alice talk about the real situation on the ground, a lack of hope, that the shelter system doesn't work for everyone, even if there are beds available at the inn. And then the affordable housing list in the city is so long that people can wait and wait and wait. So I guess just from your perspective, like, what are the priorities? What needs to be happening? What as people are watching the show right now, they're probably feeling like I am, going, well, what can I as an individual in Hamilton do? Who do I talk to? Where do I send money? What can we do, Jeff?
Yeah. So There are options, and there are opportunities, and there are solutions. So that's the good news. You know, we talked about that. We have to start with a place of deep care and compassion, I think, first, and that's us. Our politicians will follow suit, I think, so we can get away from some of this language. I just want to mention one other myth. We bump into the same story often from politicians in every municipality that we're at, and it's this phrase: "These people come from somewhere else." And I almost now chuckle, because I'm like, you know, that all the other municipalities around you are saying the same thing, and it's a way to dehumanize, and it's a way to say that this is someone else's problem, rather than this is our neighbor, this is our citizen who we care about. So
I just want to jump in for a second on that, Jeff, because I heard that recently said again, right, from, I think it was a Hamilton councillor. And it reminded me of when I first moved to the city about 25 years ago or so. I noticed that there were a lot of people seemed to be living in houselessness, and I asked about it, and I heard, well, at the time, Mayor Lastman, I guess was the mayor of Toronto or something, or Toronto was sending people with bus tickets to Hamilton, right? That they were like sending them down the highway and dumping them off. This wasn't Hamilton's fault; it was Toronto's. So I heard that 25 years ago. As being
the reality is, chances are, if you ask the four of us where we've lived, chances are we've lived in more than one city in our lifetime. Maybe many cities. And so, you know, the same could be said of me when my tax dollars need to be collected. Well, we're not going to collect his because he's not from here. We don't do that when on the other side. So once we get past that piece and we move into values and about what's important and we start then to say, all right, what do we have and what can we do? Can we make a difference? And we saw this in the small town of St. Thomas recently, where the mayor said, you know what, economic development is really important for us, but we can't do that without also being a city of compassion. So we want to be a city of compassion. And what do we do? And instead of saying, let's tear down, let's move out, or even let's look for temporary solutions that will get us the next month or the next 2 months, the focus is on permanent solutions, and we need crisis solutions in a crisis. I'm not suggesting that we don't. However, if we never get to permanent solutions, we will continue to be in the same challenge. And in St. Thomas, as an example, what happened there was that the city said, what do we have? They looked at their land and they found out that they had a building that had a vacant second story above their transit offices. It's been vacant for decades. They turned it with the help of funds from the National Housing Strategy that you mentioned. The city built 15 units of housing in their building, which Indwell runs. We did those intake meetings under tarps in encampments. And 2 weeks ago, we moved 15 people into real permanent apartments. With a supportive team that had the provincial government participating with health funding to make that work and make that possible. And so there are solutions. We can do this in Hamilton. The numbers actually of those living in unhoused situations with very high acuity, we actually know that those are around about 100 people. There's others that they aren't quite in that highest level of acuity, but we can create solutions for that 100 people, right? Just imagine, I just talked about what we did in St. Thomas, which is very doable. So we do 6 15-unit apartment buildings scattered across the city. We can do this, and we can have, I'm sure every ward would want to be a part of that and want to have options in their ward as well for people to have housing, and we can do that. It's very doable. There's models, and here's the beautiful part, Laura, is that when I talk to people, and Indwell mostly focuses on permanent solutions. So most of the folks that I get to meet are when they move into housing and they're telling me about their story of being unhoused as something in the past, which is a beautiful thing. It actually changes your identity, right? So people say, I was homeless and now I'm housed, and all of a sudden their identity isn't about whether they're housed or unhoused. It's about being a person, and so identity labels change with that action. And so what I'm hearing from people in their stories, no one yet has ever told me, that time that I lived in a ravine under a tarp, it was the best time for my mental health. My addictions improved so much during that time. No one has ever told me that during their time. So what does work? What does happen? What does help? Our institutions are trying to discharge people at a more rapid rate than ever before, and we're stuck in this cycle of people going to jail because it's better shelter and food than where they were. And so our jails are discharging quicker, our hospitals are discharging quicker, our shelters want to discharge people quicker, and we have this ever increasing speed cycle of people moving from in those spaces. But do we want people to actually be in any of those spaces? No, we want to see people thrive. We want to see people flourish, and a permanent, affordable, quality home is absolutely essential to make that possible.
I want to thank all three of you for your excellent work on this. I know that it is a passion and you give of your heart, and that's exactly what we need. If there's one word I heard coming out of this panel, it is compassion. We need to be compassionate. It starts with us. It moves to our politics in terms of real solutions on this. I hope I can have all of you back. I don't think we've covered the entire spectrum today, but I appreciate your time here on the OShow. Take care.